Special guest, Dr. Darrin Porcher, a great friend of the channel, a great friend of all of us here. He is a law enforcement professional correspondent with all the major networks here in New York. You could see him on Fox News, Court TV, CNN, MSNBC, all of them, you name it, he's on them. So Dr. Darrin, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be talking tonight about the Thomas Valva murder that took place on January 17th over in Long Island. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button. Please hit that notification bell so you can get all things DutyRon when I go live or when I upload a video. And thank you to my Patreon supporters, my channel members, and everyone who supports this channel by sharing out the video, by posting it out on your social media. It is greatly appreciated. Dr. Darrin, thank you for taking the time out with us to be with us tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, DutyRon.
Always a
It's
pleasure.
always
Yeah.
a pleasure
Yeah.
appearing with the man.
Thank you so much. So this is a very intricate case because it has so many moving parts. We have a situation where a New York City police officer at the time was involved in years of alleged child neglect and child abuse with his autistic son, Thomas, who was only 8 years old when he was murdered by Michael Valva, a 15-year New York City Transit police officer, and his fiancee, Angela Pollina. This happened out in Long Island in Suffolk County. The really strange part, and the part that I find so odd, is that every step of the way with Justina Zupko Valva, that's the biological mother, every step of the way that she went, be it child welfare, family court, calling the Suffolk and Nassau County Police, she went as far as calling the New York City Police Department to make complaints against her former husband for child abuse and child neglect. And every step of the way, it seemed like she was being dismissed. Now, she is an immigrant from Poland, and she does have a thick accent, but that's no excuse to dismiss a woman. She was even dismissed by Judge Zimmerman in family court and told to shut up. I watched and I saw the actual transcripts from that, and for me, it was shocking. So, Darrin, I'd like to get, as a New York City retired police lieutenant and someone who worked in the Internal Affairs Bureau, I know all of my viewers and all listeners out there, they would love to know the take on the procedures that happen when an alleged allegation comes in for child neglect. I know that you've probably seen and worked on some of these cases with your team, with the people you supervised. And I know that there's people out there that want to see justice for the little baby Thomas. So if you could just give us a little bit of a background on what goes on when a complaint comes in to the Internal Affairs.
Sure. Well, it's always a tragedy whenever a child is lost, and more so specific to a situation of a child abuse or child neglect attributed to that of a police officer, an active police officer. What oftentimes happens with the NYPD's Internal Affairs bureaus, they traditionally lend deference to the Department of Social Services because the Department of Social Services has a team of experts that have the ability to interact or engage with the child to assess and extract information that could be germane to a criminal prosecution moving forward. So it's not going to be an Internal Affairs Bureau detective that actually sits down with the child, so to speak, and attempts to elicit information. That being said, what probably happened in this case was they were working, they were conjoined with the Department of Social Services in connection with the investigation. And the information that's elicited through that interview is now relayed back to the police department. And that's when the police department would make the assessment as to, are we going to modify this officer? When I use the term modify this officer, that's when they remove the officer's gun and shield and prohibit him or her from embarking upon enforcement related activities. So they're better yet, classified as being on the rubber gun squad is something that people constantly have heard to. That being said, that's probably what happened. The police department is at the behest of the Department of Social Services. So it's somewhat limited because an internal affairs investigator, as I mentioned earlier, is not a subject matter expert in embarking upon or engaging in the interrogation or the interview of a child. because a child oftentimes will just close up, especially when you're speaking to them of issues of principle in connection with their parents. You know, a child is not a fool. And so when they're sitting down with a police officer and the officer is trying to gain information as to wrongdoing of the parent, the child is not going to be as willing to introduce that information.
Right.
So
It's an
that goes
8-year-old.
back to
Yeah.
why,
And
right,
it's
right.
a,
And so that's why it goes back to, as you mentioned, this was an 8-year-old. This was a child that was under 13 years old, basically. Excuse me, a child under 10. And usually, whenever we have a child that's under 10, they fit within a different protocol. Traditionally, what would happen in those types of instances is the Internal Affairs Bureau would partner with the Special Victims Unit. The Special Victims Unit, oftentimes, and that's the team of investigators that investigates sex abuse cases and crimes against children. They are experts in that realm of investigation. But even the special victims investigators, what they do is they bring in people that are clinical practitioners that will actually sit down and do the assessment with the child. So they'll bring them to a location such as a hospital room where it's something that is a soft and serene environment for the child, their toys and things to that effect. And that's when you have a social worker that will sit down with the child and engage in a conversation. And it starts with, hi, how are you? Tell me a little something about yourself. And then it progresses to the criminality, the extraction of criminality. That's what Special Victims does. Well, I shouldn't say Special Victims, but that's the partnership that Special Victims has with the social services component, that being one of these therapists or the quote unquote investigators that deal with that. It's not a special victims detective that
right.
sits in that room. So, as you understand it, there are three factions or three levels that occur. And the internal affairs investigator is not a part of that. They merely are the recipient of that of that information.
Right. And to expand on that, the case in point with this particular situation is they never even got that far. A case was opened up, Internal Affairs opened up a case, and then they actually closed the case. And then there was a second case opened back up. So when this young boy was murdered on January 17th of 2020, there was technically an open IAB investigation, Internal Affairs Bureau investigation on Officer Valva. I don't know if he was modified, but I'd have to assume that he was probably modified at that time. But the allegations were of a sexual abuse nature and also physical abuse nature. So these are extreme allegations that, I know that our job at the NYPD, they don't just brush this under the rug. And there was a lot of people who spoke, Darrin, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. There was a lot of people, and, civilians have a different view of the police department, and rightfully so. They know nothing about the internal working components of what goes on. But you and I both have experience with how serious the internal investigations go as far as corruption and things of that nature with the police department. And there was people who spoke in a lot of different groups and in a lot of my chats and questions that came into my DutyRon.com website about police corruption, about police sweeping this under the rug because he's a cop. They were trying to protect him. And I know this to not be true, but I'd like to get your take on it, Darrin. What's your feel on an allegation of this seriousness comes into the department? What goes on? Is there protection provided to police officers just because they have the badge, the gun, and shield?
Okay, the police department, more specifically the Internal Affairs Bureau, is not surreptitious in their investigations and trying to protect an officer, so to speak. The job is basically, let's just find out what happened. After we find out what happened, that's when we'll do an assessment on the back end as to the channel of either discipline or prosecution or an exoneration, if that is at all possible. One thing that I unfortunately didn't introduce into this equation is this was a special needs child. And oftentimes with a special needs child, you need to really go into this somewhat tepidus because we take in consideration with information that's relevant for a criminal prosecution. one of the things that comes into focus is what is that child's ability to assess right and wrong? What is that child's ability to get on the stand and speak to something from a credible perspective? So that being said, when we have a special needs child, it becomes a far more arduous task to make that person, I should say, that child, the ability to allow that child to commit to sworn testimony. If that child can't commit to sworn testimony, then it becomes problematic and it basically collapses at the foundation in terms of moving forward. That being said, with a police officer, they are no different than anyone else in the public. The child needs to be sworn and credible. If we can't establish that, then it's difficult for us to move forward. I don't know what the backstory in connection with the outcome of the complaints that were lodged in the past were, whether they're unsubstantiated or whether they were open investigations, things to that effect.
Right.
But the special needs kids are very challenging,
Yes.
especially when they're under 10.
I agree, but the thing was here is that some of the allegations of food deprivation were documented by the child. He was a third grader in grade school, and his teachers and the nurse weighed him. He was lost 11 pounds in one school calendar year, which is that's corroborating
And
the
Ron, that's a good point, but we also have to reintroduce the fact that this was a special needs kid. Was this a situation where the kid just wasn't eating?
yeah.
So, and
But
that's one of these things that we would have to get into the weeds to
correct.
assess.
Yeah,
Was it a situation where food was placed in front of this kid, and let's say in the lunchroom, and the kid was pushing the food away?
no,
So
but you
that's
see, it
something
was the
that,
exact opposite. I did a little bit of a deep dive into the background of this. He was him and his brother both were at that school, and they were both autistic, and they were both the allegations were for abuse with both these children. But the Thomas is who we're focusing on here is because obviously he's no longer with us. He was eating out of garbage cans, and was the school teachers were bringing food for him. They brought in the father,
right.
they brought in the stepmother, and they had a conversation with them that you have to bring more food to school. And this was all documented through CPS and
Right.
complaints. There was over 33 complaints made, and the school teachers and the administrators at his school called CPS, and all of the cases were closed and unfounded. So, and this is not something that's just talk. This is documented on the record. Suffolk County has convened a special panel of legislative body to go and do an investigation on this. Suffolk County Police basically dismissed this woman when she would call from Nassau County to Suffolk that her kids were being kept in the garage. And it's just, for me, it's mind-boggling, Darrin, for me to look back at all of the inner details, the inner workings of what was done. Basically, the biological mother, Justina Valva, from Poland, she was screaming at the top of the rooftops that my kids are going to, she actually said on record in family court, if you don't do something, my kids, meaning all three of them, she had 3 kids with this guy, all 3 of my kids are going to die. And one of them, it happened to him. And so this is a travesty of justice, but we are just trying to, I'm just trying to cover for my viewers and for the listening audience, the investigation that's done from the NYPD side, not Suffolk County, not Nassau, because I don't know about those police departments and how they work. But there was an internal investigation, an internal affairs investigation. She lodged a complaint against the supervisor or sergeant and a police officer for failing to take a report that she made against the defendant, the biological father, that he was keeping the kids and starving them and sexually and physically abusing them. There was bruising on the kid's face and documented bruising at the buttocks for slapping or whatever the case may be, and it was all documented, but nothing was done about it. So this is a family court, the CPS, child welfare, the police department, school, where you send your kids, you figure you send your kids to school. It seems to me that the school did the most out of anybody other than his own mother. The mother was screaming in court and being reprimanded left and right. Now, granted, I think she did make a couple of mistakes by not securing legal counsel, but that's just my opinion, and I'm not finding any fault in that because she didn't have any trust in the legal system. She's an immigrant from Poland, and she went on to become a corrections officer. She was a New York City corrections officer, the mom. So when she started making complaints against her husband, her ex-husband, her words were that they weren't taking her serious and that the New York City Police Department was protecting Michael Valva. And I had a hard time accepting that. I didn't fight it. She told me herself. I actually spoke to her in person, and she told me herself, Ron, I made complaints. I wrote a letter to Bill Barr. I wrote a letter to the president. I wrote letters to county legislators. She was screaming at the top of the roofs for someone to do something, and nobody did anything. So after her son died, she wrote these letters to, she wanted the attorney general to do an investigation. She wanted the FBI to come in. She wanted, there's just mass failure along every step of the way. So this is just an enormous failure of our system, as far as I can see. And I'm sure that there's probably thousands of other children that have fallen victim to the failures of our system that's in place. And I hope something comes of this in a positive light where they can protect children going forward. Because for me, this is, I scratch my head. And you know me very well, Darrin, and I know you very well. There's not many of these cases where I say to myself, something's not right here. But it's usually one or two agencies that might drop the ball. Not everybody. I mean, everybody from family court to criminal to the responding police officers in both Nassau, Suffolk, NYPD never responded to any of these calls. But it's just crazy, and that's why I wanted you to come on and get your take on it. And I know that you have quite a bit of experience in investigating alleged corruption or allegations against members of the service, and there's a need for that. I always felt, I always broke your chops when you were in internal affairs. I was always offering you blocks of cheese and things of that nature, but that was just all in good fun.
Or a beating in the back of the building, right?
Right. It was just a little noogie on the head. But, for me, this just is so confusing because it is a systematic, system-wide failure on every level.
You're absolutely right. This is a systemic collapse of a system that was designed to work that failed this child. We had a situation years ago, Nix Marie Brown in Manhattan, whereas this was an abused child that was subsequently lost their life as a result of being continuously abused by her mother's boyfriend. And it eventually entered the criminal arena, but it was too late. The kid was dead. And so sweeping changes became as a result of the Nix Marie Brown death. And should there have been teachable lessons in connection with that? Sure. When we look at what happened here, especially with a police officer that was a part of this, you would think that there would have been a greater spotlight to assess if there was criminality afoot. And it goes back to, as I mentioned earlier, there are several different layers that the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau will work with to gain information. And it's not those Internal Affairs Bureau investigators that actually sit down and speak to the child.
Right.
The child is the most germane component in these investigations because that's where you elicit the information in connection with either being criminality or the possibility of exonerating the officer. And then once again, we go to someone that's under 10 and special needs, it presents a far greater challenge.
Yeah,
Sorry, Ron.
She also, Darrin, reported that her husband pointed his service weapon at her and said that if she went and made a complaint against him, that he would kill her. So I would have to say that
those types of complaints need to be, in my experience, those things are handled swiftly unless there are clear inconsistencies with the complainant. Now, bear in mind the complainant, meaning the mother of the child, had made numerous complaints, and she was censured in court. If that was something that the Internal Affairs Bureau looked at, the command center said, "Look, you know what? This is a chronic complainant. If someone has chronic complainant status, then they're not going to be as apt to accept their level of credibility in connection with these cases." Like, one thing that people don't know, we have people that call up the Internal Affairs Bureau every day.
Right.
The police commissioner is at my door. He's threatening to rape me. The NYPD chief of the department he pulled the gun and pointed it in my face. Do you have people that call every single day and do this? And it's so unfortunate that, you cry wolf so many times over, that when we actually have something of a substantive value,
Right.
and there's a chance that no action is going to be taken.
Yeah.
And I give you an example. You remember Gary Beckton when you were working
Mr.
in
Beckton.
PSA 2?
Yeah, I took so many
Okay.
calls from him.
Gary Beckton would call up the NYPD's Internal Affairs Bureau every day and say the racist cops, the eavesdropping Uncle Toms are doing this to him.
Yeah.
They are violating him. And what happened to those complaints, Ron? After it got to a point, did people take Gary Beckton's complaints seriously?
No.
No, they didn't, because he was designated as a chronic complainer.
Yes.
Listening to what happened with the mother of this child, I think that she was so driven by emotion, because these are her children.
Yes.
This is a blood relative of hers.
Right.
And so I think that she was just so driven by that in many aspects, her messaging may have been ill perceived.
Right.
But the foundation of it was sound. But you couldn't assess the foundation based on, I guess, the theatrics in connection with her delivery.
Yes. I mean, that could be, I don't know.
Because she was very eccentric from
Right.
what I'm hearing.
Yes. But she was, again, she wasn't privy to the system. She didn't know the correct way to do things. And she was just a mother who was witnessing her children with all different types of abuses that came to fruition, and they were true. The starvation, the mental torture, the physical torture, all of the things that she said and claimed were happening to not just her child who was murdered, Thomas, as she refers to him as Tommy. It wasn't just Tommy, it was her other son, Anthony, who is on the spectrum, and her third son. They were basically, there was videos that she posted on Twitter, and I think Twitter took them down, but I watched them and I saved them just so I could have them. But she posted videos on Twitter of the biological father, the transit cop, dropping the kids off, and like the kids crying and screaming and running to her. And then there was videos of him and his fiance in the car saying, "You love Angela," that's her name. I hate mommy. And they were like coaching these kids and making them repeat this. And most people here in the chat and everybody who watches this replay knows exactly what I'm saying. I know you've never seen this or you never heard it, but I'm telling you with my own ears and my eyes, I saw it. It's the cop making this video while he was on duty, active guy, making the video with the kids in the car on their drive to the visit. Like these kids were taken away from her based on allegations that he made against her of abuse, which never were true. The kids loved the mom, and anyways, they were just mind screwing these kids and basically brainwashing them into saying that their mom was no good. So when CPS did interview them on a couple of occasions, they said that they were scared of their mom, they were this, but they were being coached by these two manipulating monsters. I refer to them as monsters because anybody that takes a child and puts them in a garage at 19 degrees Fahrenheit and leaves them there and then watches them on video and makes a joke about the kid falling on his face because his legs gave out because of hypothermia, that's a disgusting, disgraceful monster in my eyes. And I know you concur with me on that 100%.
Wholeheartedly.
It's just, this is demonic, very, very monstrous behavior. And with his own flesh and blood, this is what makes it even worse. Now, I spoke to a couple of my friends because you know I was in the trip team. I spoke to a couple of my correction friends in Riverhead and Yaphank, and it looks like these two are not having a great time, and rightfully so. They're on PC, the protective watch. They tried suicide a few times, and so they're in protective custody, which they don't deserve. But of course, as the correction guys, my friends told me, this is our job. This is what we have to do. All right, we got 2 more minutes. I want to just open it up really quick. I sent messages out to my channel members and to some of my Patreon supporters, and there were some questions that came in. And if anybody that wants to put some questions in the chat, I'll look at it quick. But I wrote down a couple of questions. I asked people if they had questions for you, Darrin. I covered one of the main questions I asked you earlier. Do you feel that that this defendant, this murderer, he's innocent until proven guilty, obviously, in a court of law, but this person, Michael Valva and Angela Pollina, will they be afforded any special treatment by the courts, by the criminal justice system, because of the police officer status? Your answer to that,
They
Darrin.
they won't be afforded any additional protections based on him being a police officer. However, they will be afforded their constitutionally provided rights in court. They're innocent until proven guilty. So as a result, they will be receive the accommodations such as a plausible defense and a plausible trial, whereas their argument can be heard in open court. They will also be allowed to cross-examine witnesses or potential witnesses for their defense moving forward.
Right. Another question too here is, this comes from a good friend of mine, but they are outside of the country. So I'm going to reword this question a little bit. This comes from Linda, and she's in New Zealand, and she says, DutyRon and Darrin, do you feel that the defendant here was able to get away with, and I'm rewording the question because it wouldn't have made sense. I know what she was saying. You feel that the defendant was able to get away with undetection, or the way she put it is deferral of any type of investigation because of his status as a police officer. In other words, what she was saying is, do we feel that the responding police, the investigating agencies like child welfare and the like, because his status as a police officer, do we feel that they just said, oh, there's no way he could have done any of this? Does that happen?
Well, first of all, Linda, I was in New Zealand last year. I stayed in Auckland at the Sofitel, and I really love New Zealand.
It
So
says
I
Kia ora.
salute you for I salute you for being a resident of New Zealand. Moving forward in terms of this case, one of the problems that we have is not so much as the officer's status as a sworn police officer, but I believe that there was a custody hearing prior to the officer receiving custody, full custody of the kids, and the mother was deemed as not fit. And so I think that played a role in her statements not being credible against the father, because I think that she was probably perceived as coming from a place of retaliation against the child's father. And so a lot of her statements were not taken as being credible. But I don't believe in any way, shape, or form it was the officer's status as a police officer that prohibited the authorities from moving forth with a credible investigation. I think this was something that kind of fell through the cracks.
Right. And I also added, because I answered her before with my answer, but I thank you for that, and she thanks you, I'm sure, for that answer. I also let her know that, the possibility of maybe one responding cop saying, hey, this is a scorned woman that's just trying to, railroad you, that's a possibility. I think anything's possible, but I don't know. None of us know because none of us were there. And according to Justina, she was dismissed by, supervisors, by Suffolk County Police, because she was being loud, and she was rightfully so. This is her child. She was screaming at the top of her lungs that there's something, not right going on here. And, she felt that basically she was dismissed on many different occasions. And we'll have to see. I mean, there's a pending investigation. The police commissioner of Suffolk County, she came out in a news conference and said that they're going to do a head-to-toe investigation on what happened here. But listen, let me say in closing, thank you so much, Dr. Darrin Porcher. Follow him on Twitter and Facebook. I'll link it down below. Follow his social media. He's always kind and generous to all of the DutyRon family and anyone who comes on his social media and leaves a comment. That's what I got to say. What's great about Darrin is he doesn't forget the little guys. He's
You're fine.
he's in the big leagues. We are just in the minors trying to climb up the
We're
rope.
all, it's a level playing field, brother, and
So
we're all equally the same.
Dr. Darrin, thank you. Many of my viewers and my subscribers and fans and friends, they always say, DutyRon, what a great guy Darrin is, because he answers me when I leave a message for him or I say something to him. And I said, you're getting better service than I do, because I send him a message and he doesn't even answer.
You're fine. You're fine.
Thank you,
All right,
Darrin.
brother.
I appreciate you
Well,
coming
thank
in.
you. God bless you. God bless the channel followers. And I'm just happy to be a part of the segment. And thanks again, Ron.
Thank you, Darrin. All right.
All right, brother. Okay.
All right. That was Dr. Darrin checking in and checking out. So I got another 5 minutes of, I have a timeline I want to just show to you guys. So this is a timeline of events that happened with Justina Zupko Valva. So let me quickly, and I didn't say hello to everybody. And I want to say thank you to everyone who gave super chats. Stella Bella, thank you for that $20 super chat. She also wears a badge. They ignored her. She was blacklisted. I kind of agree a little bit with you on that. Scarlett, thank you for the $49 super sticker super chat. I don't know. I think I might have missed a few others. So whoever gave super chat there, I want to just say big super love. Thank you so much for that. Greatly appreciate the super chat there. That is always appreciated. I will forward that off to Justina. I have a donation that Sergeant Melinda sent to me, $100 PayPal. She sent me $100 to forward straight to Justina. I will do that tomorrow. I will go to her house and give that to her. So thank you, Retired Sergeant Melinda. I appreciate the PayPal for Justina. That's going straight to her. All right, so here's the timeline. I'm going to scroll it back. This is from Newsday. Thank you, special thank you to Dookie 4000 for allowing me to be in her husband's Newsday paid account. So thank you for that, Dookie 4000. And thank you to everyone who has left positive interaction in the chat. So it looks like in 2002, the Justina Zupko Valva and Michael Valva were married. She was an immigrant from Poland. She came to the United States on a student visa in 2002, and they got married. In 2009, the couple gives birth to their first son, Anthony. And then in February 2011, the relationship between Valva and Michael Valva frayed before Thomas was born. Thomas was born. She said she suffered verbal and financial abuse from her husband during February 4th, 2011 intake over at the Safe Center in Long Island, Nassau County. I'm going to try to make this big so you guys can see this. Let me try to make this a little bit bigger. I know it's not great. Okay, so that should be better so you guys can see what I'm reading here. This is the section that I'm on. I'm highlighting it. It looks like she went to a domestic violence safe center. The officials determined that Zupko Valva qualified for services according to the court record. So in 2011, that was 10 years ago, she documented abuse, verbal and financial abuse from her husband. And then September 2011, Thomas Valva is born on the 14th. He and his brother, he just turned 9 this year, God rest his soul. He and his brother Anthony, 2 years older, would later be diagnosed with autism. So in 2013, they were diagnosed with autism, and then their third son, Andrew, was born. Late 2014, Valva moves out of the family home. That's Michael Valva, the husband. Condominium later that year. Zupko Valva accuses him in court papers of abandoning her and the children. She claims her estranged husband has been having an affair with Angela Pollina. the piece of work that murdered Tommy, along with Michael Valva. A hospital administrator and mother of three, and a mother of three daughters. So Angela Pollina is a mother of three. Valva and Zupko Valva initiate divorce proceedings in 2015, the next year, the beginning of a long, contentious legal battle. Then in 2016, Zupko Valva, that's Justina, tells Nassau Child Protective Service that Valva abuses the boys, according to court transcripts. She tells Judge Francis Riccoliano during a hearing that her sons come home extremely hungry and thirsty after their visits with their father. She claims Michael Valva didn't get medical attention for Andrew when the boy had an 102 fever. Also that month, Judge Francis Riccoliano, I know I'm not saying it right, appointed Dr. Peter Farvo to conduct a forensic evaluation of Zupko Valva, and the children. That was in 2016. Then September of 2017, Nassau County Judge Zimmerman, this was the piece of crap judge that told her to shut up, basically. This Judge Zimmerman this woman is a real piece of crap. Hope Zimmerman. She should be removed from the bench and arrested. Nassau County Judge Hope Zimmerman awards temporary custody of Anthony, Thomas, and Andrew. This was September 2017. This is what started and contributed to the murder of Thomas Valva. This September 17th order by Nassau County Judge Hope Zimmerman, temporary custody of Anthony, Thomas, and Andrew to Michael Valva during a hearing. The judge also says that Justina can visit her children with unsupervised visits every other weekend. Justina, who represents herself during this hearing, tells Zimmerman her estranged husband is a porn addict who has engaged in inappropriate behavior in front of the boys, including photographing his genitals and sending the pictures to other women. Shauna Curtis, Valva's attorney, that's from Michael Valva, tells the judge her client has the means to provide safe environments for his sons. So that was September of 2017. She alleges that he got a porn addiction. Fall of 2017, Anthony and Thomas are enrolled by their father in the East Moriches Elementary School, where the staff expresses concerns about abuse. 2017, this is. 2017, the East Moriches School District in Suffolk County, where the staff expresses concerns about abuse. Special education teacher Nicole Papa writes in a memo titled Valva Family Concerns. Thank you for the super chat, Stella. That the boys are not getting enough food to eat, and Anthony loses 11 pounds in 9 months. She writes, while Thomas gains only 1 pound in the preceding 20 months. Little baby Thomas only gained 1 pound in 20 months. Both come to school several days in a row with dirt on their bodies. This is a writing from a special education teacher, Nicole Papa. Some of these teachers were at the funeral, by the way. Let's move on from fall of 2017 to January of 2018. In January of 2018, CPS reports that a social worker meets with Thomas, who has a mark under his eye. Thomas says his mother did it, but could not elaborate. When asked about an accusation that his father punishes the kids by putting them out in the cold, Thomas denies it. His brother Andrew also says his mother hurts him and that he is afraid of her. Both Valva and Pollina adamantly deny to CPS they ever made the children stand out in the cold as a form of punishment. And we know that's a lie because they were doing it probably from January 2018 or maybe before, all the way into Tommy's death. Additionally, in an interview with a caseworker, Thomas said that his mother bit him on the arm. He lifted up his sleeve, but there were no bite marks. He said his mother hits him and demonstrates by standing up and slapping himself on his behind several times. He said he doesn't like to visit his mother's house because mommy hits me. It makes me sad. This, we all know, was brainwashing by Michael Valva and Angela Pollina of these kids. They basically, and I saw this on a video, we all saw the clips of the video. they basically were telling him, "Mommy is mean. I hate mommy. I love Angela." I don't know if any of you have seen that. I won't play it here, but I did play it on my previous videos. This statement from January of 2018 corroborates what they did on video, and they posted it on Twitter. Justina posted it on Twitter. So this corroborates, and it shows proof that this is what they were doing to these poor kids. And they were, Thomas is autistic on the spectrum, and Anthony as well. And they're interviewing these kids he died when he was 8, and this is 2018. So he was 6 years old when this interview happened in January 2018. 6 years old, give or take. All right, let's move on from January to February 2018. CPS says Justina Valva is indicated for inadequate guardianship of the boys, citing her deteriorating mental state. Meanwhile, a CPS report states an investigation produces evidence to show the actions of Valva placing the 6 children, his boys and Pollina's 3 girls, at risk of becoming physically, mentally, and emotionally harmed. They find inadequate guardianship. So this is beyond. I don't understand this. CPS says Zupko Valva is indicated for inadequate guardianship of the boys, citing her deteriorating mental state. This is basically because she was demanding that the kids be taken away because of her knowledge that they were being abused, and they dismissed her. This is a dismissal right here. One of many dismissals. They basically told her, "You're crazy." March of 2018, Suffolk County Family Court orders Valva to refrain from acts that create unreasonable risk to the 3 boys. So in March, that's a month later, Suffolk Court tells the father, and so this is them confirming that they're acknowledging that there's some kind of problem with the boys. Suffolk County Family Court orders Valva to refrain from acts that create an unreasonable risk to the 3 boys. April of 2018, Valva completes a parenting skills program. That's Michael Valva. That same month, school psychologist Renee Emin writes a note stating the biggest concern is that Valva and Pollina, that's Michael Valva, the father, and Angela Pollina, the 2 who were arrested, do not understand the depth of Thomas and Anthony's disabilities. She also notes the boys are afraid to go to the nurse's office because Michael Valva, the father, and Angela Pollina tell them not to go there. She also mentions that Thomas is having multiple bruises on his buttocks, on his bottom, which she is told are from Michael Valva. April of 2018, Thomas Valva shows sign of physical abuse. He should have been taken back and put back with the mother, or put anywhere but in the custody of the murderer, the person who killed him, his father. They left him. So that was April 2018. Fall of 2018, CPS interviews a school psychologist who reiterates her concern about Michael Valva, not understanding the boy's needs. The school also expresses concerns about Anthony's weight loss, and they say the boys have been picking food up from the floor and consistently asking for snacks. They also note changes in their language skills and social behavior. February 2019, a report to CPS states that for at least a week, Anthony has come to school with his clothes and backpack soaked with urine, and that Valva and Pollina are not addressing the situation. So a whole year has passed, and the children are still being abused. That was in February 2019. March of 2019, a report to CPS states Valva and Pollina, those are the 2 defendants, are telling Anthony to act out in school and on the bus, and that they want him transferred to another special school, according to the anonymous report. Valva and Pollina do not adequately feed Thomas. The children are losing weight, and the father punishes Anthony by putting him in a garage for a long period of time. It's March of 2019. Almost a whole year goes by from this report to CPS that they're putting him and punishing him and putting him in a garage. That's the end of winter of 2019. He died January 17th of 2020. This is, again, more failures by CPS. They get a report that the kids are being put in the garage for long periods of time, and they do nothing. March, April, May. 2 months later, a report to CPS states Valva, that's the defendant, throws a book bag at Thomas's head, and the boy sustains a bruise and a bump on his forehead. A few days later, CPS reports that Anthony throws the bag at Thomas's head, and no safety risks are found. No plan is in place. Pollina is uncooperative. That's Angela Pollina, the monster who helped kill Thomas Valva. Pollina is uncooperative and says she feels that they are being harassed by school. She doesn't want the children to be interviewed at school or by CPS. Of course she doesn't want them to be interviewed, because then it's going to expose her. This is why they deserve to rot in jail. They deserve the death penalty, but we have weak politicians here in New York that took the death penalty away or that won't enforce it. And this is, again, so now here's July of 2019. The divorce proceedings continue before Nassau County Judge Joseph Lornitz. Zupko Valva objects to the appointment of a new person to perform a forensic evaluation of herself and Valva, saying the woman is not qualified. Now, I don't know what that's about. I'm sure Justina has explained that maybe in other videos. She notes she has not seen her children in 18 months. Justina Zupko Valva repeats her assertions that her children are being abused in the home of her estranged husband. She says that Anthony is sleeping in a cold garage and not being fed. July 2019. Here we are in the winter of December 2019. Wislaw von whatever, a friend and advocate of Justina Zupko Valva, writes a 12-page letter. That's December, a month before Thomas is killed. One of Justina's friends, an advocate for Zupko Valva, writes a 12-page letter to Judge Vito Caruso, Deputy Chief Administrative Judge responsible for overseeing operations of local town and village courts. Walwender complains about the treatment of Zupko Valva by the judge and requests that the judge be removed from the case and the judicial bench. He also requests that the Valva children be removed from the home of their father. A letter dated one day before Thomas's death, a letter dated January 16th, the senior court analysis responds to the letter to Judge Caruso. He refers Justina's friend to a response from a separate court, which essentially says the court cannot discuss the case with him because he is not a party to it. The next day, January 17th, Suffolk police respond to Valva's home, Michael Valva, on Bittersweet Lane in Center Moriches at 9:40 a.m. after receiving a 911 call that Thomas has fallen in the driveway, which was bullshit. That was a lie. Thomas is transported to Long Island Community Hospital where he is pronounced dead. An investigation by Suffolk County Homicide Police detectives reveal that Thomas and Anthony had been forced to sleep without blankets, without a mattress, without pillows in the garage the night of January 16th when the temperature outside dipped below 19 degrees Fahrenheit. Suffolk County medical examiners determined Thomas's cause of death, hypothermia. This, my friends, is a travesty of justice. This is a systematic failure of our court system, of the system that's in place to keep our children safe. It is despicable, it's disgusting, and it can't be tolerated. There has to be, these people have to be removed and charged. February of 2020, Valva and Pollina are arrested. Just a week later, after his father said his son fell in the driveway while waiting for the school bus, which was an outright lie, the father took his son's dead body and brought his lifeless body into the basement and staged CPR. So when the responding 911 police and firemen and paramedics respond, they see a good father doing CPR on his son, who he already knew was deceased. And if that was not worse, if that was not the worst thing he did, that night he came home from identifying his son at the morgue and started a fake GoFundMe for his son's funeral expenses. I'm breaking up here talking about this. He had the audacity to start a GoFundMe to collect money that he was never going to use for his son's funeral, that he was going to use for himself. And there was quite a few $1,000s in that GoFundMe. I thought that was the utmost outrageous, sickening, despicable, disgusting thing I've ever heard in my entire life. That this piece of human garbage right here, these two pieces of human garbage, tried to cover up their systematic abuse of an autistic 8-year-old boy who was his own flesh and blood. February of 2020, Valva and Pollina are arrested by Suffolk police January 24th, 7 days after he killed his son. An indictment unsealed February 6 charges Valva and Pollina each with second-degree murder and 4 counts of endangering the welfare of a child. Both plead not guilty at their arraignments. February 6th, if convicted, they face up to 25 years to life in prison. Valva tells Suffolk County Family Court judge that he has been fired from the NYPD, which he has been. Police say he was suspended without pay, and that is the end of the timeline. Unbelievable. Guys, I want to just say this. If you see something, say something. If your neighbor's got children and they're screaming all the time, don't just take it like it's kids that are screaming. Make a report, call up about it, do what you got to do. So I want to just say a special thank you to everyone who has come in here, and I am going to continue to put this case in the public's eye. The news is not reporting on it. Nobody's reporting on it. I'm going to continue to bring this case out into the public's eye the best that I can. And any of the donations and any of the super chats on this live stream or that come in, I will forward them to. So let's continue to pray for baby Thomas, for his brothers, Andrew, Anthony, Justina, her mom, the rest of the community, her friends, those people who rally around her to do the right thing, everybody in all the Facebook groups and on my channel, and all the kind support and words. The continuation of that is important for Justina. She really loves and appreciates each and every one of you. She is a godly woman. She prays, and she has faith in the Lord above. So let me just say again, special thank you to Dr. Darrin Porcher for coming on and giving us his thoughts and opinions in the police side of internal affairs. And get out there. If she goes to court and you're able to go and you're not working and you're in the area, or if you have the day off, go to the court appearances with her. When this trial commences, I will be there. I'll do the best I can to cover it, and I will go there. I want to hear the opening statements. If I'm allowed to, if I can get in the court, I will, and I'll bring it to you guys. So much love and respect from my house to yours. God bless the world. God bless the United States. God bless each and every one of us. And a special prayer for Thomas Valva. May God continue to keep him in his kingdom. No more pain, no more suffering for Thomas. The pain and suffering continues for his mother, his brothers, and the rest of his family. So we're just left here. He's in heaven, peace, at peace, no more pain. So guys, thank you so much. Share this video, subscribe to my channel, put it out there on social media, and let's keep his memory alive. Thank you for joining, and I hope you enjoyed this live stream. Talk to you on the next one. Thank you to everyone who's given super chat. There's a couple that came in. Life of MC, Lonnie Gore,